We're back with you in Nevada, Iowa, at Lincolnway Energy, and we're inside the plant right now. I want to bring in Eric again. He's the president, Eric Heckelmeyer. And Eric, tell us a little bit about what you were saying goes on inside these buildings.
Sure. So when the corn that we saw was delivered gets broken into a fine powder, it gets shipped down here and fermented in 730,000-gallon fermenters. In that fermentation process, enzymes are added to the starch, which breaks the starch down into sugars. Yeast is added, which consumes the sugars and produces alcohol and CO2. The CO2 is captured next door, which is then sold to a local meat packer. And the ethanol is then brought over this direction to distillation. In distillation, we separate the alcohol and the water and the mass by use of temperature. The alcohol gets lifted out, the water and the mass moves to the dryer building and makes the DDGs that we saw earlier. Everything is controlled here.
Get all that? Yeah, it's kind of a complicated process, but I want to thank Eric again for kind of letting us know. The simple explanation has got to be that corn that you originally saw is dried up, then there is...
The simple explanation, the corn is added to yeast. The yeast produces the alcohol, and everything else is dried up and sold as animal food. That's
so,
simple.
That's ethanol for you folks, and I want to thank Eric and everyone here at Lincolnway Energy. And while I still have Eric, we are in the middle of an election year. Have presidential candidates been here? Have they reached out to you? And why is the RFS such an important issue in campaign 2016?
The RFS is central to ethanol, and ethanol is a fuel system, is a fuel product that is vital to the United States. We are able to produce fuel here in the U.S. with renewable resources and to replace 10% of the oil that comes in from overseas. This is vital to us from a national security position, but also
so basically the United States is not going to be as dependent upon foreign oil.
Exactly. And
so
in a world where that gets more and more dangerous, dependent on people who really don't like us, that we're able to produce the product here is vitally important to America, which makes this a very important issue in the political season that we're looking at right now.
Well, thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
And I want to bring in Eric Branstad right now. He's with America's Renewable Future. And on that topic, Eric, of why this has become such an important issue in campaign 2016, I was at a Donald Trump rally last night in Cedar Falls, and when Donald Trump went after Ted Cruz, his first line was, "I'm for ethanol, Ted Cruz is not for ethanol." Did you expect ethanol to become such a vital issue to this campaign? And do you believe that in the end it'll help someone like Ted Cruz, who at this point is the front runner in Iowa?
You know, Mr. Trump has really taken the time and spent time with us and learned about the industry. I mean, coming from a state like New York, he needed to really come and learn what kind of industry this is and how important it is, not just to Iowa and not just to the Midwest, but how important it is to the country and the kind of technology and efficiencies that we're making for the entire world. With Ted Cruz, he's not spent the time to do that, and Mr. Trump has seen this as certainly an area and a spot that is important to Iowa that shows stark difference.
And tell us, Eric, are you guys planning on endorsing a candidate? It seems like, as Eric mentioned earlier, the majority of the candidates on both sides got a good rating from his group, America's Renewable Future, but Rand Paul and Ted Cruz got a bad rating. Where do we go from here, and how do you educate Iowa voters on who's best?
Yeah, we will not be endorsing any candidate. However, we have put together a report card, and that report card really is just like one we would get in high school. It has the good grades and the bad grades. And the good grades, fortunately, are all of the candidates, all the Democrat candidates, and all the Republican candidates, minus Senator Cruz and Senator Paul, who have not spent the time learning the industry, talking, being educated.
So for you, Eric, it really comes a lot down to taking the time, getting to know how vital this is to the economy in Iowa, to farmers, and then also, in fact, making it a part of your legislation.
So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be turning out, we have 52,000 team members who have, as part of their criteria in choosing a caucus candidate, they're going to choose a candidate that supports the RFS. That's one of the issues that they're going to to use in the decision making of their candidate. Not only do we have our 52,000, but we have the farmers, and we have the Iowa corn growers and the Iowa soybean growers, and everyone coming in under a big blanket. So I think it's not just our 52,000, but it could be a 250,000 member umbrella in rural Iowa and farmers across Iowa.
So Eric, what do you say to people who say, you know what, ethanol is too expensive to produce, it's not good for the environment because of the emissions that come along with producing ethanol, and it's actually an issue that maybe some Iowans don't care about as much as they used to?
You know what? I think they're wrong, and we certainly have the facts are behind us, and it's going to be great. And part of our ultimate mission is to share with you, to share with the rest of the country how important part of energy renewable fuels are.
And as Eric and I were talking earlier, there was a poll that was released by the Des Moines Register about the GOP race here in Iowa, and Ted Cruz actually dropped a few points to Donald Trump to the point that he was at, and your group came out with a press release saying you believe that he's dropped in the polls because of his stance on RFS, wanting to phase out ethanol in the next 5 years.
He dropped 6 points last week. What he doesn't realize is 73,000 Iowans are employed in the industry, $5 billion worth of wages. What he doesn't realize is that it's a big voice, and he's going to hear that voice come caucus.
I want to thank Eric Branstad for talking to us. And as Eric just mentioned, 73,000 jobs in Iowa. I want to bring in one of those employees right now who works here at Lincolnway Energy, Chris Cleveland. Come on in, Chris. And we're educating our viewers and everyone that's watching on ABC Digital a little bit about ethanol, because outside of Iowa, a lot of people don't know what ethanol is, how it's produced, and how important it is to the Iowa economy. What would you like people to know as it's become a central issue of this election?
Well, I think it's going to be around a long time. It's been around a long time already. I think it's good for the future. I think it lowers gas prices. It's American made. I think it's here to stay.
And when it comes to presidential candidates, many of them have made RFS and ethanol a central issue of their campaign.
Correct.
Did you ever expect that your industry would be this deep in politics?
No, I didn't expect it to be this deep. No.
So to let people know that, you know, this is an industry with real people like yourself working hard every single day to try and get that corn from the farms here to turn it into fuel, what do you believe is some misunderstood facts about ethanol?
I think one of the main things is food burst fuel is one of the main things I think out there.
And just to give our viewers what Chris means by that, some people have said, well, there's all this farmland in Iowa and it's a waste to use so much farmland to produce corn just for ethanol. It actually doesn't do enough in the end, but it does make us less dependent upon foreign oil.
Yeah.
And so what are those misconceptions when it has to do with land? Why do you believe that the land is being used for the right reason?
Land's being used for the right reason. There's a lot of it out there. It's the type of corn that's used to produce ethanol. There's different types of corn on foods. There's all sorts of things that go into much more than what people are being taught or brought up in the ethanol.
And to let our viewers know, 73% of all the corn grown in Iowa is for ethanol. So it comes to a plant just like this one. And I want to ask you a little bit about that election. Have you made up your mind yet? And what are you looking for in a candidate?
I'm looking into ethanol for the future. I haven't made up my mind yet, and still a lot of focus on it and tuning into it.
So it seems like, Chris Cleveland, you would want a candidate that does have a strong stance on ethanol, so you probably are less likely to vote for somebody like Ted Cruz, who of course got a bad rating from Eric Branstad's group.
Correct.
Were you interested in Ted Cruz at the beginning, but now you're kind of turned off? Or?
I'm just kind of keeping my eyes out there. Haven't really made a decision yet, but still looking into it.
Why don't you let our audience know what you're going to do to make a decision?
I'm going to listen. It's all about, you know, this is Iowa, farmers, agriculture, ethanol. I'm still going to tune in and listen to the big speeches and kind of go from there.
Well, I want to thank Chris so much, and before we sign off, just want to show you guys exactly where we are. So Chris, what is this tank right here, and then I know we're near the control room?
This is basically your washing tank for different parts of the plant after fermentation and stuff like that. You have to clean out the tank, you have to keep it, you have to keep all the infections out and stuff like that. It's just like brewing.
And then this, what goes on in this building exactly?
This building is just your fermentation process. We store a lot of chemicals in here for clean water and clean fermentation.
And then what about over there?
Over there is some more storage, some more heat exchangers. We like to keep the process nice and clean.
And then what you're seeing in that room, that's the control room for the whole plant. That's where all the work goes done. And Eric right now is coming in to give us one final show and tell here. Eric, what do you got?
This is 200 proof alcohol that we produced here. Clean product. It looks like alcohol. It smells like alcohol. Really, the only difference between our alcohol and the alcohol people drink is we add some gasoline products in it to make it undrinkable.
So is that ethanol?
This is ethanol.
Why don't you show us, bring it up close to the camera. So that's what ethanol looks like. It's not as yellow as gasoline as you may have seen, and it goes within gasoline, as you see at many gas stations. Talk about that process.
And it's certainly all biodegradable. In most gasoline in America, about 10% of the gasoline is blended with alcohol. Alcohol has a higher octane rating than gasoline, so it's able to upgrade the quality of the gasoline that you produce. It has oxygenates in it that make it burn cleaner, so when you burn alcohol or gasoline with alcohol additions, it burns cleaner, and the emissions to the air are healthier.
So you guys may not have known that this right here, ethanol, 10% is in your gasoline when you go to the gas station. I know here in Iowa there's signs when you fill up, and it lets you know specifically how much is going inside your tank. That's not at every gas station, but what's important to know is that this product produced here in Iowa, the #1 ethanol producing state in the country, is ending up across the country, and it's also excess product being used to feed animals on different farms throughout the country. So that might be one of the reasons why so many people, including Ted Cruz, Donald Trump, Mike Huckabee, Rick Santorum, pretty much every single candidate in the race are talking about renewable fuels, are talking about ethanol. And we'll continue to have more of this story here from Iowa, 19 days from the Iowa caucus. I'm Josh Haskell in Nevada, Iowa at Lincolnway Energy.